Imagine, if you can, being 12 years old and your father suddenly passes away, and you're told you're now the man of the house. The weight and the gravity, the pressure of being told that when you're 12. What do you do with that kind of information? And how does that shape and mold you into your future? Well, in today's conversation, I have what I call a reality leader, a person that truly comes alongside and knows how to serve and bring out the best in others. This is one of the bravest, most candid conversations I've ever had in my life. To have somebody that's a thought leader, that's a CEO, an influencer say, I don't have all the answers. And I've had to go on my own journey to figure out who I am. Stay tuned. Hey there, you're listening to the Living a Limitless Life podcast. I'm Sharon Hughes, and on this show, we talk about mastering your mindset, growing your faith, and becoming the leader you want to be, with tips, strategies, and interviews to help you create a life you love. I'm really glad you're here. So come on, let's go. In today's episode, I have my good friend, Mike Lenda. He's the CEO of the Well Coffeehouse. He has a long history of serving people through Compassion International, Blood Water Mission, and serving coffee because he used to work at Starbucks. So coffee is his gig. People is his passion. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It's so gracious and kind of you to invite me into this community. Thank you. Thanks
so
for
thrilled.
asking.
I'm so thrilled. Yeah, if it wasn't for our mutual friend, Mike Foster, we would have never met.
That's very true. And that was such a great time to be with you and with him. And, that was very special learning for me as we both desire to serve others and give to others, as well as strengthening how we take care of ourselves. So that was great.
It is. Well, before I pushed the record button, our conversation just started unfolding in so many directions that I was like, wait, we should be recording. So I'm so excited for the value that you have to bring to the show. I mean, you're a thought leader. You are such a servant leader as well. And I just want to jump right in with the story that you shared with me earlier about being handed a t-shirt that said creator.
Yeah. I was in New York, which is a city that I always say that I go to escape. Now, for some people, New York is far from an escape. It's noisy, it's loud. Some people go to the desert. I go to New York. I'm crazy that way. And it's primarily, I always say, in that big city, I can be small. And there's something about that juxtaposition that I just feel closer to God. I feel I really feel, nobody's going to run into me in Times Square. So it just really feels like, I feel like home there in many respects. And I was there for a marketing conference, and I was leading a marketing strategy that I was really struggling getting off the ground. And I was leaving this marketing conference just being reminded of, this is marketing. This is what I miss doing. And just really feeling a struggle of what I was trying to accomplish. And I was walking to a WeWork in Manhattan. I don't know if you've ever visited their co-working spaces, very creative all over the world. And I was going to head there for an afternoon of co-working. And in their idea of welcoming, they handed me all these stickers of New York. And then they handed me a t-shirt that said creator on it. And the first thing that came to my mind was, I can't wear this. I'm not a creator. Author Danielle Laporte has a quote that's, can you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? And when that voice came into my head of, I can't wear this, I'm not a creator, I really felt God say to me, when did you forget who you were and how I've created you to be? And that was a moment of me one, realizing how off track I was of seeing what I was accomplishing was not equaling who I was, which you've spoken about before. What my job is and what my title is or what my checklist is, the things I'm not checking off the box, wasn't aligning with who I was. Therefore, I wasn't it. And it was a wake-up call. It really was, of being reminded of who I was. And it really, for an entire year, it was a quest of rediscovery, of quieting my soul, sitting with just really understanding, just because I'm not accomplishing what I thought I was there to accomplish, that my purpose was not tied up with who I was, or what I was accomplishing. And that entire year is eventually what led me to my current role a year later, leading the Well Coffeehouse here in Nashville. And so that was a very, very pivotal time, very, very pivotal experience. And I still wear that shirt on days where I need to be reminded of who I am, and it's really, I feel like it's my Superman cape that I put on under my outfit, as a reminder of, those times of doubt of, can I accomplish this? Or, am I really cut out for this? It reminds me of that I'm uniquely created for, to be creative, and uniquely created for the opportunities that I'm currently in.
That is such an amazing story. And isn't it just like God that you end up somewhere and you're going, what am I doing? This just like, it's not working and everything. And he throws a door open.
Right.
And goes, look, this is why I brought you here.
it raised my eyes from, staring at the ground, grumbling about why I'm not accomplishing about what I'm accomplishing. It lifted my eyes to realizing, really who I am, and how it's not attached to what I'm, what my task list says.
Yeah.
So that definitely was a powerful moment.
Well, I love the things that I see you post online on your Instagram, because you just do have such, like, you're so brave. You just put yourself out there and you say things. Like, before we started recording, we talked about how there's that pressure as leaders, CEOs, to know what you're doing. And you alluded to that sometimes you don't.
Definitely. When I took this role, just to even back up, when this opportunity came up months before, during this whole year between the creator shirt and taking this role, I felt that my soul was being prompted in a new direction. I didn't know what it meant, but I felt God was stirring something within me. I would even ask my wife, has God told you anything? And she would say, no, I'm afraid to ask him, because I think she was afraid we were going to end up in some hut in Botswana, which I would have been fine with. That would have been a little bit terrifying for her and our 5 children. But with that being said, I felt something stirring within me. It was when the role came up to take the opportunity to lead the Well Coffeehouse. At first, I felt an immediate peace. I felt like that's what my soul was waiting for, even though I kept thinking, oh, surely it's this other role I'm about to interview for. Nope. Surely surely God, this is how you're aligning it. Nope. I kept feeling like I thought I knew, but when this opportunity came, first I thought, oh, CEO, it's actually taken me a long time to even say that's what I am. I would say, like, come up with these garbly words of, I'm a part of a coffee chain, or, as opposed to being okay with the title I've been given. Because, when I first said to my wife, do you think I could do this? She said, if you're offered the job, you take it. If you're not offered the job, you don't take it. Thankfully, she believed in me at the moment more than I did. And God has reconfirmed it over and over again, because as people have heard that I've taken this role, the common phrase is, well, that makes sense. And when they think of my journey from, being in coffee, both with Starbucks in operations and marketing, to working for a water organization, to working in child development, and now it all coming together to lead this organization. You're right. It's easy for me to one, think, oh, I have to have all the answers, and I have to know everything. I wasn't brought into this role, one, by the board of the organization, because they know I have all the answers. I remember way back in college, somebody saying to me, God doesn't want your ability, he wants your availability.
Mm.
And I've held on to that, it's really about, God didn't give me this role because he can think I can do it for him. It's about doing it with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about, him leading and relying on him. It's not about him relying on me. And I have to remind myself about that. I'm not the savior of the well. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to fix it. Not without him, because he's the one who's given me this role in the first place. So as long as I keep that into perspective, I'm okay. The minute I start relying on myself, we're all in trouble. So
That's amazing. You're so humble. I think that's one of the reasons why people are so drawn to you, is because you're just, I think I want to call you like a reality leader. Like you just see the reality of life, and you're very non-judgmental and very humble, and you just seem like you take things just like head on and like, okay, let's just figure this out.
Well, and I think, I know you shared a lot about your story, in the podcast. And when I think of my journey, is at the age of 12 that my dad died of cancer. And I was born to older parents. When I was born, my dad was 54, my mom was 45. I was a bit of a surprise. And, I encountered a lot of, darkness and death and sadness growing up. And, when when I was at the age of 12, my mom said to me, "You're the man of the house now." And, that's a lot for a 12-year-old to take on. I feel like from 12 till now, it's been figuring out, what does it mean to be quote unquote the man of the house or the leader. It had been a quest of realizing that I really take your phrase of a reality leader to heart, because it's really been a quest of realizing, what does it mean to be a leader. And because for my young years of being told I'm the leader of the house or the man of the house and feeling ill-equipped to do so, I feel like it's only been in the last several years that I've been able to realize that it's okay to say, that you don't have all the answers. Those voices in my head that say that I'm not enough. I need to surround myself with people who remind me of who I am,
Right.
and remind me of the truth rather than the lies.
Wow.
That's
That's
been a
awesome.
quest. It's a quest, and it's something that I need to constantly remind myself of.
That's so cool. Because there's not a lot of people, especially when they're in leadership roles, they can say that. And that's what I particularly think is so much more attractive isn't the right word. Like when you're looking up to different leaders, it's not like, oh, that's attractive about you. It's a different word, and I can't quite think of it. It's something that you're drawn to. I don't know. I feel like we need a synonym here. Another for it's just that humility. It's always the humble leader that comes in and just says, "Hey, I don't have all the answers, but let's figure this out." It's like that's the person that you want leading the team. It's not the person that always walks in acting like so polished and like they've got it all figured out and nothing else matters because he's just like gonna run the show and kind of, like just goes full force at it. And the rest of the team is like, well, okay, I guess we're doing what he's saying, but we still aren't clear and we don't really know what we're doing or what our role is. I've seen that so much.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think that's hard. It's hard to be led when you don't feel valued and you don't feel like your voice is heard. And the first month at the Well, I worked behind the counter and I made coffee next to the baristas. And some people knew who I was when they'd come in. They say, did I read about you being the CEO? Why are you handing me a muffin? But I felt like that was the way to understand the business, was to spill coffee on myself and stand next to somebody and say, what do you like about working here, and what are we doing that makes it difficult? And and I know that I probably could spend months behind the counter and still not catch it all. Thankfully I'm not going to be winning any latte art competitions anytime soon. But it is important, I believe, to care, for me, to care about the people first. And, I take that from great leaders I've had before. And, I think that's what we probably all do. I know that's what I do, is take from the people that are in our rearview mirror and, insert it in our playbook. And, that's my hope, is that the people that I've worked alongside will say that truly that's what I did. I worked alongside them, not in front of them. I championed them. I mean that I had all the answers, but my hope is that, one of the things I say when I interview people is, you're going to spend a lot more time with me than with the people you'd like to spend time with, like your family and your friends. So if I'm not making your day enjoyable or your work environment enjoyable, then either you need to change or I need to change, or something's got to give. And so I truly desire that.
You just keep dropping those leadership bombs. I have to go back through and highlight these for the show notes, because these are some great takeaways. So last November, you were talking about the voices of truth, to quieting the lies and healing a weary soul. And I had commented to you earlier, I would have never thought you had a weary soul.
I don't know how familiar you are with the Enneagram, but but I'm a 2, so I'm more concerned about your soul than I am about telling you about mine. So it's actually taking me some practice to be okay to say, okay, let me talk about myself and talk about my weariness. When we met at Mike Foster's retreat, one of the things that he said that has stuck with me since is, it's okay to be the doctor and the patient at the same time.
I remember that.
And so when I think of that, I always, going back to feeling like you always have to have all the answers. It's okay to, be able to provide some answers, but realizing that you sometimes need to provide those answers to yourself, or look for others to do that for you. That when doctors talk about what the work they do, they call it practicing medicine. And the idea of practicing, they never stop practicing. And so the ability for any profession, for all of us as leaders, as believers, whatever it is, to realize that we're always practicing. And that means that we haven't, there's not a finish line there. There's not a completion, that we're always practicing. And so I think when I look back at the season I went through from November to November, from being handed that creator shirt to taking the role at the Well, it was a time of, seeking truths. And, some of it, came through authors like Jeff Goins, who has a book called The Art of Work, where the things that I heard from him, things he says in his book, is that your calling is not a single event in your life. It's the whole body of work you make, including your job, your relationships, and your legacy. And that success isn't the goal, legacy is. And when I think of things like that, it removes the pressure of even this current role that I'm in being a checkbox of, woo, I've arrived. It's realizing that this is a part of the whole story. And, I've been thankful for authors and other voices and friends that, remind me that, and my own wife, that reminds me that life is more than just a destination. That it's definitely a journey.
Oh, that's just so good. So good. Yeah. When we were at Rescue Academy, that statement that Mike Foster made about being both patient and physician, just that pretty much shook me. I was like, oh, I have permission. Yeah. He was so good at giving permission. We have to have him on the show.
Word. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, gosh, Mike, I just feel like I could talk to you for hours. You just bring so much. Take time to listen to your soul and to know who you are and who you're meant to be is like gotta be the single best piece of advice for not just CEOs and leaders, but just everybody on the planet. Like, I think we get kids in this cycle of knowing what they're going to be when they grow up, and they have so much pressure, and then jump into college, and then they have their crisis in college when, they're not in love with their major, and they've either taken out a bunch of loans or their parents have, and then they have the guilt and all that stuff. And then they just go, well, I better write it out. And I, went to school to be an accountant, so I guess I'm an accountant. And then by the time they're like 45 or 50, they realize that's not what spoke to their soul.
Yes. Well, and, I recently spoke at a university, and it was interesting. It was after the administration just got up and was talking about career fairs and polishing your resume. And I stood up there to say, realizing the anxiety that college students have to figure it all out. And, I stood up there to say, just to let you know, I haven't been in college for a couple decades and I still don't know what's going on. And, I think there's unnecessary pressure put on ourselves and others to feel like, we have to figure it all out by a certain date or by a certain situation like graduation in our lives.
Yeah.
And you're right. We do put a lot of pressure. My friend Tony Hale talks about, working in the entertainment industry. He's an actor, and when he talks about, working on a movie, he says, he will be looking for a job for months, if not years, for a job that he'll have just for a few weeks, where the rest of us are looking for a few weeks for a job we hope to have for years. And when you're on a movie set, the most common question is, what are you doing next? What are you doing next?
Oh, yeah.
And that it's important, as he would say, is it's important to be content with where you are, or you never will be when you get to where you're going. And, the idea of figuring it all out, knowing where you're going next is exhausting.
Yes.
It's exhausting. And to be okay with where you are, and resonated with my quote of just sitting with your soul and sitting in silence, which can be really nerve-wracking to sit in silence. But, one of the questions, I went to a calling class at my church, and I thought, oh, calling class, surely they will tell me exactly what I'm called to do. And ironically, the class had nothing to do with that. It had to do with reminding me of who I am. And the very first question they asked us to do is to sit in silence and, and think about if God spoke to you, how much, and if you asked him, tell me how much you love me, what would he say back to you? Or if you asked him, if you thought about me when I was being created, what were you thinking about? And just to sit in those questions, that in itself, when you think about calling, again, it wasn't a class about what job I was going to take next, even though I was hoping they would tell me. I realized it was much more about sitting in the silence of my soul and realizing who was I uniquely created to be. And I think that's
so powerful.
That's
it really is.
Yeah. And for, again, another book that was really that I really connected to, I was an author, Ruth Haley Barton, Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership, where she talks about one of the downsides of a visionary leader. We're always running, and we get our sights set on something that's so far out in the future that we miss what's going on in our lives right now. Her quote is, "We're blind to the bush that's burning in our own backyard and the wisdom contained within it." And when I read that, it's true. I'm always running. Right now I'm even at a conference about the future of coffee and the impact that we could make at the Well. And my heart is full today of all these ideas. The easy thing for me to do is to get into the comparison trap as I sit next to this notable coffee leader and this notable coffee leader. And then, going back to, what I was saying earlier, of, oh, I'm not enough to be them, or I'm not good enough to be them, or I will never be good enough to be them. But realizing that I've been called to run my own race.
Yes.
And to be okay with, this is where I am. This is who I'm supposed to be. I'm going to get exhausted if I'm going to try and be this other person. So,
right.
All of that to say is, but all of that requires me to sit still for a minute and not get lost in what other industries are doing or other leaders are doing, but what am I uniquely called to do? And it
That's
takes
so good,
practice.
Mike. I love it. You know, I talk a lot about, figuring out who you are and that whole self-discovery journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it truly is quite a process. And
Mm-hmm.
I get kind of stuck in it. I tend to be able to answer all the questions of, well, who I'm not. Like,
Sure.
that just seems so much easier. Maybe I'm working it backwards almost. If I keep defining what I'm not, I'm going to be left with a list of what I am. I don't know if that even makes sense to you.
Well, and my problem is the opposite, where I think, oh, I could be that too. Oh, I could be that too. Sure, I could be that. Where then my list of who I am is a full list of who others feel I should be, rather than who I am. And
Oh, that's
so,
good.
I think there is value in as I've heard before said, being able to say, give your best yes. You have to say no to
Mhm.
something so you know what you're saying yes to.
Oh, yes.
And so I think there is value in realizing you can't be everything to everyone. It's okay to be a specialist. I think that's something
Oh,
else
I
that
like
I've
that.
learned.
It's okay to be a specialist. I
It
like
is.
that.
Yes, I think I learned that from Danielle Laporte too, where the idea of it's the world wants us to be a generalist, or I should say, you feel
Mhm.
like it does. Where when your boss says, "Hey, how do you know about SEO or Excel or whatever the latest mobile technology?" You want to go, "Yes, I do. I definitely do," even though you have no clue, because you don't want to feel like you're inadequate or that you're not enough. And I shouldn't say you; it's really me. That I need to make sure that I'm enough for this request that's coming my way. That it's okay for me to say, I have no clue what that is, and I'm okay with that. I feel I'm always drawn to people who are willing to say, I'm not good at that. It gives me freedom to do the same thing and say, nope, I'm not good at that.
That's
This is what I.
awesome. That's awesome. Okay, I want to be respectful of your time. Do you have time to talk about the conference that you're at right now
Sure.
and coffee, your love for coffee and your love for clean water for
Mm-hmm.
everybody?
Sure. Yeah,
Awesome.
I didn't expect to be back in coffee. I worked for Starbucks both in operations and marketing, and then moved to work for HIV/AIDS and water organization called Blood Water, and then I didn't know that there was a world for all of that to be combined. I think they
Mm,
say life makes sense in reverse. It
right.
definitely feels like that in this current role. And the conference I'm at right now is around coffee in crisis, where it's a world where demand continues to grow and prices on the commodity market continue to go down, which really means the coffee farmer is the one that's most highly affected, where the money is not reaching them as it should be. And the Well Coffeehouse is a nonprofit coffee house where we donate our profits to provide clean water in developing countries. And
Mm,
my desire is that we're providing clean water at origin, where we're sourcing some of the world's greatest coffee.
mm,
Ironically, a lot of the countries that your favorite coffee comes from, Indonesia, Kenya, Ethiopia, which is the birthplace of coffee, have some of the greatest issues for access to safe water. And in my soul, it feels like incongruent to take some of the greatest coffee and not reach back and
mm.
meet one of the greatest needs of their communities. And so, and while I'm at this conference, it just continues to make me realize the expansiveness of the need. Author and thought leader Steve Garber has said, now that I know, what are you going to do with what you know? I feel like I'm implicated in this story now that
Mhm,
I've been given this
mhm.
knowledge. And so I feel a burden and a heaviness to continue to evaluate I don't want to be an organization that just says we're doing good. I want to make sure that it's truly impacting those that we serve in the best way possible. And so I'm thrilled to be here at this global coffee gathering and just continue to learn what does it mean to not just do good, but do well, make a difference to the farmers that without them, we wouldn't be in existence in the first place.
Right.
And even the farmers that are here, I am so drawn to them because of the work I've done globally. I'm drawn to the farmers that are here, and it's been great to just walk up to them and celebrate the work that they do, so that we get to do what we do. So I'm thrilled to continue to share this.
That's just amazing, because the average person that's walking into any coffee house has absolutely no idea that this is going on.
Yeah. And I'm thrilled to be surrounded by, thousands of coffee leaders here that are hearing the same message, that have the desire to do the same thing back in their city and town and country. And so, change will happen if we all band together and realize that it's up to all of us. So I'm looking forward to continuing to explore that.
Oh my gosh, Mike, you are just such a treasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, I have all kinds of notes that I've written. I mean, just the takeaways of practicing being you and remembering who you are, and taking that time and space and really understanding that your life is just this journey. It's not just one simple calling on your life. And I agree with you. It makes so much more sense when you look at it in reverse.
Yeah,
it really does. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I would love to have you back on the show. Anybody that's listening that would love to talk to Mike, or please follow him on Instagram. I'll have everything linked up below. But if you need a leader, you need somebody to come and speak to your group, I think Mike is your guy. He's a wealth of information. Humble as heck, as you can tell, and just an absolute delight. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great just seeing the journey you've been on, and anything I can do to continue to celebrate your becoming into this new journey. I'm glad to do it. Thank you for inviting me into it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for inspiring us.
Thank you so much.
Wow, so many amazing takeaways from that conversation. I think my favorite is take time to listen to your soul, to know who you are and who you are meant to be. If you'd like to connect with Mike, his contact information is below in the show notes. Thank you for joining me, friends. Until next time, I'm wishing you every good thing.